Hello everyone, and welcome to Biopedia. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing a rather strange feature of Ice Age ecology and human history. However, we're going to cover this in the slow burn method rather than stating the information outright. So, let's discuss pyramids and woolly mammoths. What do they have to do with each other? Well, you'll find out. Firstly, let's talk pyramids. Pyramids were used to house dead kings in ancient Egypt. The Great Pyramid of Giza is listed as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The other 6 include the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, Artemis's Temple at Ephesus, Zeus's statue in Olympia, the tomb at Halicarnassus, the Colossus of Rhodes, and the lighthouse at Alexandria. This list comes from On the 7 Wonders, a text written by the 3rd century engineer Philo of Byzantium. His authorship is disputed, but the text itself comes to us courtesy of a codex from Byzantium from the 800s. A 2014 journal from the Nexus Network Journal states that the Great Pyramid took 2 decades to complete from 2694 BCE onwards. For our purposes, this estimate would say it was completed in about 2674 BCE. It was constructed for Khufu, a member of Egypt's 4th dynasty. Kate Spence, writing in Nature in 2000, dismissed a second given construction date of 2554 BCE and instead proposes a range between 2485 and 2475 BCE. Pyramid construction in general ended during the 6th dynasty, listed as sometime between 2686 BCE and 2325 BCE. All of these numbers sound impressive, but what does any of this have to do with today's topic? To answer this question, we have to turn to the other half of today's tale, mammoths. Mammoths are relatives of elephants, which are stereotypically shown as having been hairy, but also existed in hairless morphs or variants which were a lot smaller than modern elephants. An example of this last fact would be the dwarf mammoth Mammoths columbi in the Californian Channel Islands. Elephants as a family arose about 6 million years ago to spread over a lot of the world, and mammoths themselves evolved between 4 and 5 million years ago. 3 million years ago, they came into the European continent and stayed huddled in temperate woodlands. By contrast, populations which travelled to the area around northern China and Siberia adapted to colder environments such as those found in the later Ice Age. This process generated the woolly mammoth Mammoths primigenius, which colonized Eurasia and spread across the Bering Strait into the Americas. As with most species, woolly mammoths eventually died out. The North American mammoths and mastodons were hunted to extinction by the hunters from the time of the Clovis people around 11,000 years ago. Climate change meant mammoths died out around 10,000 years ago on the mainland of Eurasia and the Americas. We don't know if human and Neanderthal hunting were the cause of the death of mammoths, although they may have picked off isolated populations. At Wrangel Island, mammoths carried on until 4,000 years before the present, according to calibrated radiocarbon dates. What this means is that, had the dates been uncalibrated, it would have been years before 1950 that we're talking about. As it is, these calibrated dates have been corrected, so 4,000 years ago means that, if you were to specify 2022 as the present given the year of publication, mammoths at Wrangel Island would have bitten the dust in about 1977 BCE. Let's pause for a minute and zoom in on a specific detail surrounding this location. Wrangel Island is an island in northeastern Siberia which was populated by mammoths except for a period between 9 and 12,000 years before the present. Notably, of the 124 mammoth bones which have been subjected to radiocarbon dating as reported by Vartanyan et al. In 2008, 106 fell between 3,700 and 9,000 years before the present. Mammoths on Wrangel Island were cut off from mammoths elsewhere and eventually died out without human intervention. From what I can tell from the text, these dates don't mean that we think they died out sometime in the window between 9,000 and 3,700 years ago. Instead, it seems that the mammoths became cut off 9,000 years ago and died out 3,700 years ago. If we convert this to years before the present, as per the study's release date, i.e. 2008, this would give us a somewhat overly precise date of extinction of 1692 BCE. The point I'm trying to get at, for this episode in general, is one that I've seen mentioned in one of my sources, but which I've presented in more depth here. That is, the date of, let's say, about 1700 BCE for the extinction of mammoths on Wrangel Island comes about 6 centuries after even the end of pyramid construction in about the 24th century BCE. So, there you have it. At the time when the pyramids were being constructed, there were still woolly mammoths alive on the planet. This means that, although the fact of Cleopatra VII of Egypt living closer to John F. Kennedy's presidency than the Great Pyramid's construction may still hold, it's also true that she lived closer to the mammoths than the pyramids. With that, that's it for this episode. As always, thank you for listening. Feel free to get in touch at the show's email address for any questions, comments, or topic suggestions for future episodes. Until next time, have a great week, everyone.